gentlemen, we are live broadcasting from beautiful Pioneer Square, Seattle, Washington. This is a Comedy Web exclusive podcast brought to you by the fine folks of the Comedy Underground, hosting comedy events 6 nights a week. You can follow their schedule at comedyunderground.com. Tonight I'm joined by the Seattle manager of the Comedy Underground, Mr. James Milton.
Hello, hello.
And Mr. Paul Hooper.
Hey, man.
Fresh off of 5 shows headlining the Underground this weekend. Hope Seattle's been kind to you.
Yeah, it's been great. I got here Wednesday night, and it's been fun. It's been 4 years since I've been here, so this is beautiful.
4 years? So has much changed in 4 years? Did you get a chance to go out and do anything, or is it all shows? Or
It was all shows. I mean, I got to walk around Pioneer Square a lot and explore a lot. This is an area I didn't see much 4 years ago.
It's an area we try to hide from people, really.
I like it, man.
You like Pioneer Square?
Yeah.
So were you accosted by many homeless, or
Yeah, it
set up
happens.
any homeless funds while you were out there?
Yeah, looking for cigarettes and the change and stuff, so,
It
that
happens
happened
in
for
Pioneer
3 or 4
Square.
days. But it was okay. It's a great neighborhood, and the last time I was here 4 years ago was like 2009. I did the competition.
Uh-huh.
So we had 2 nights at the Underground. The rest of it was up and down the coast of Washington, so I didn't get to spend much time in Seattle. My hotel was here, but I didn't really get to do anything except for sleep and then travel the next day.
Yeah.
So this feels like I got to walk around a bit.
You were the runner-up of that competition, weren't you?
Yeah, in 2009.
All right.
Sean Kent bested me by
Bested you.
point
Oh, okay.
1/4 of a point.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But where is he now, right? And you're here talking to us.
He's got a
so-
TV show now.
Well, but still, you're here with us.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
It's
It's
all
nice.
meaningless. How deep are you now? Is this part of a tour that you're doing, right? How deep into that are you right now?
It's pretty much a never-ending thing, really, because I'll have next week off, and then I go to Atlanta, then Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, then Wilmington. There's a couple.
Punchline Atlanta.
Yeah, Punchline Atlanta.
Carolina Comedy Club.
Yeah, Myrtle Beach, then Nut Street in Wilmington, North Carolina, and there's a couple one-nighters mixed in too, where I'll do like Ocean City, Maryland, and there's something in Raleigh, and then I'll get a couple weeks off in August. But it's been going like pretty strong since January.
Yeah. Do you like the road?
I do love the road. I mean, I'm over the sort of 14-hour drives and the small towns in the South that are troubling. But the other stuff, like coming to a city like this, I like when I look at my schedule and I'm like, oh, I'm in Seattle, Washington, 2 weeks. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, and then I'm, on the beach the next week. I really like that schedule. It's just when it becomes, if it's Dothan, Alabama, or some shit like that, that's where it troubles me.
Do you get bored easy? Is that what you're saying too? Like you like to be at one place to the next day?
I just like interesting cities. As long as it's an interesting place, and I feel like the crowds are open-minded and intelligent, then I'm in a good spot. But
So do you adjust your material when you go down to the South then, or
no, I'm hard-headed to a fault.
really?
Yeah.
Do you get into trouble down there? Or?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I've had some trouble. I mean, I did a show in Birmingham last year that was an absolute calamity.
What happened?
Well, yeah, you can't just leave it at that.
Fuck. I mean, well, you know what? I wish there was more excitement or like something crazy, like it was a meltdown or something. But it really came off the rails when I was talking about coffee.
Coffee.
And my napping.
It's a
situation.
controversial subject.
Yeah.
You know how they feel about their coffee down there.
Sometimes I wonder, like if, like in my 20s when I was a drunk, I don't drink anymore, that I used to offend people. Now I worry that maybe I bore people, especially in the South. Their attention span is short, and if they just like it really dumb, they just can't listen to a longer setup or something like that. But there's no exciting thing. Like I didn't say anything that shocking that you could pinpoint and go, oh, you shouldn't say that in the Southeast. No wonder it fucking exploded in your face. It was nothing like that. It was just sort of strange. They were okay for 15 minutes, and then it started to come away, and then I was in the middle of like some of the just talking about my coffee and my obsession with my naps, and they just were out. And then it turned into a back and forth, and it was a big club, so it was hard to tell.
A back and forth about coffee?
Well, they were just like heckles, and then you couldn't tell because the club was so big that they were like a football field away, literally. It was like a small theater, so you couldn't even hear what they were saying to you, so there was no way to go back at them, and it was just a mess. And over the years, I think the more I've done comedy, the harder it is to do the real, like, deep South, I found. Like, when I first did comedy the first year or two.
Unless you're like Killer Bees or something? Or
Yeah, unless you just really, sometimes in those smaller, like, markets and where it's really, like, Bible Belt, unless you keep it really dumb for them because they're so conservative. Everything scares them. Everything shocks them. You say goddamn one, too. I did Alabama years ago, and I had another moment, not quite as bad as that one, where I lost the crowd, and I replayed it in my head, and I go, I wonder what happened. The only thing I could ever figure out and trace back is I said goddamn one too many times for their taste. Like they almost had a limit. that you could say goddamn. I mean, you can feel like when you say goddamn in other places in the country, people don't really, unless you're just gratuitous with it and it's redundant, but they really like pause and you can feel them.
Well, they say that there is a direct correlation between literacy rates in different regions of the United States and religious fanaticism. Like the lower the literacy rate is, literally the more like religiously fervent they are. So there's some sort of correlation. You might be onto something. And comics, it's funny, comics are some of the greatest sources for social commentary and like the pulse of really what's going on out, because they travel all over the place to all not very many other people do that, and have that perspective and actually talk to like large groups of people and throw things out there that might be controversial or testing their theories or their beliefs and really get that instant feedback on it. I mean, that should be some kind of science. Like if you're a stand-up comic, that should qualify you to teach a college level course on like politics or whatever.
I really do feel it on stage. Like I do a joke, or there's a joke that involves the economy, or a foreclosure joke that when I do the Wells Fargo thing, and I can tell in the last, I may have been doing that a little over a year, and I can see how it's changed. You can feel it. Sometimes it's more of a gut punch, the audience. In certain regions, you can almost feel the foreclosure market in that particular city more than another place that they don't really, it's not that bad. They just laugh hard. In other places, it's half and half. And with different things like that.
To home.
Yeah, and that stuff with the economy or with religious stuff, you can feel it. You can feel the reaction almost of the town. If you do 4 or 5 shows there, you can tell, And it's very strange. It plays with your head.
And you refuse to tailor your material when you travel around like that.
No, I'll mix up the order and stuff, but I really am stubborn to a fault where I'm like, no, this is
not cutting out the coffee bit. I'm doing the coffee bit.
Fucking stand strong on the coffee bit. I believe in this one.
So do you ever stumble into a club, though, and you've been there before, and you think, all right, this isn't going to go well because I've got my coffee bit, and we know how these people feel about coffee, but I'm not changing it. I'm doing it. I mean, do you run into those scenarios where you're like, all right, I'm just going to go up there and come out on my shield?
Not really. I mean, I'm hard-headed to a fault. Sometimes I'll promise stuff. I'm like, if you do that, it's probably not going to get a laugh here because the last time, or they're going to tighten up, and you're just going to have to do it. And then I get in the heat of the moment, and I just get stubborn, and I get in the first line of it. And it's not really going well, and I just decide to finish it. I don't know what that is. It's probably a bad habit of mine where I should just ditch it and run, but I'm just like, no. You can hear the story, and once in a while, it'll work out. It'll surprise me, and they'll fucking come along, if I just stick to it.
Or if they're just on, they're on board with you, you're having a good set, and you just...
Yeah, and the one thing I do say now that I'm talking about Birmingham is that when I look back on that set, I was talking about coffee when it came off the rails, but I'd done a joke about how I thought I was molested, that story, the butt bumping story, which is, if you're homophobic, they might tighten up on that, but they got through it in Birmingham. And then...
So it's a joke that is homosexual and molestation at the same time, is what...
Well, it's a story about for my
you're
child.
You're going in deep there. I mean, you're kind of pushing all buttons at that point, really.
Yeah, it was about.
So maybe the coffee didn't have a whole lot to do with it.
Was
delayed reaction.
Yeah, the lingering emotions from the molestation. Yeah, the molestation bit. But because I did the molestation thing, and then I went into the coffee thing. But then there's a tag on the coffee thing about what I like. If I go in a coffee shop and there's a straight man in his 20s making my coffee, I walk the fuck out. I like to have a gay man or a woman over the age of 50, a grandmother type. So that coupled with the molestation story, that might have been the breaking point. In my mind, as a comic, you go, well, this is a bit about coffee. The bullet point is coffee, but there's something deeper that they hate. You know what I mean? Yeah, and then they have me pegged as a homosexual, and they were all...
He likes that gay-friendly coffee. God damn it.
They were fine with the molestation, but once they found out you prefer a gay guy make your coffee, no. That's where you cross a line right there. That says a lot about the South, I guess.
Yeah.
I heard Tennessee Williams was gay, which growing up in the South must have been even more... You know what I mean? I mean, back then?
I guess, man. I'm who's Tennessee Williams? I'm not even sure I know.
The playwright, Streetcar Named Desire, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof.
Yeah.
Not very cultured. Are these some of your favorite plays?
No, I was just talking to someone about David
Tennessee
Mamet and different stuff, and they just mentioned that Tennessee Williams was gay, which I didn't know, and I thought that was kind of amazing growing up, in the South, he had to have been born in the 20s or 30s or something. I mean,
this is the type of thing that comes up in casual conversation with James Milton.
I just have a random storehouse of gay celebrities that I can surprise you with, I guess.
Yeah. Would have been a tough life. The Southeast is, I was born and raised, I'm from Charlotte, so that's a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm from Indiana, southern Indiana. There's lots of illiteracy and racism and Bible thumping going on down there, but it wasn't too bad. It could be worse, I think.
Well, thinking about it, Alabama at least has a comedy club, but Mississippi doesn't have anything.
Wow.
Well, they might have a one-night thing. I've heard they had a couple, people, there's
What's
some
the
comics
biggest
there.
city in Mississippi?
Jackson, I believe.
Huh.
And they used to have a comedy club, and I did it I don't know, this is 8 or 10 years ago, did it, and just people wouldn't support it. It was a nice enough club, and then they would get offended. It was very weird. And then
So that's because a lot of times comedy clubs go under, there might just be no interest, but this, like, people were, like, upset, like, people are saying bad things at this place, and
it just seemed like they didn't promote it well in Jackson, Mississippi, and then on top of it, the small crowds that they got just took everything so they just took it so hard. So
they took everything seriously.
yeah.
Like, I can't
probably
believe we
would,
are saying these things. These are terrible things to say.
They're not
Yeah.
used to stand-up comedy or someone saying what they...
Well, it always blows my mind when I see that, and I see that a lot, and I've experienced it myself on stage, where all of a sudden, like, people start taking it seriously, and
Yeah.
they get this expression on their face, like, I can't believe you're saying these things, and these are terrible things to say, and surely you must be joking, and like, yes, it's
Yes.
a comedy show. That's
I
what's
know.
happening here. It's so strange how people, like, sometimes click out of that mentality, and I don't want to get all misogynist or anything, but
However-
seems like drunk women really have a tendency to be the first ones to be like, these are terrible things for you to be saying.
Yeah.
I'm very offended.
But I've seen them do things even when it's not something,
Yeah.
wild or controversial. They're just drunk and they're women and they just want to
And they're
be
terrible
part of the
people.
show or be the center of attention in the
Yeah.
show.
I see. I still can't figure it out 15 years in. I talk with comics all the time of what.
Have you done any bachelorette parties or anything like that?
Yeah, I've had those over the years. I did a fucking club. It's a good club in Rochester, Minnesota. First time I ever did this club. I go in on the Friday night, first show of the week. There's 2 shows that night. First show's a big bachelorette party, they tell me. Like, all right, and it's a big crowd. And whatever, I got in. They were being loud, so I got into it with them, whatever. And they ended up walking out.
Really, the whole, like...
Bachelorette party, like 12 of them. And then the late show, the owner was laughing. He's like, I got another bachelorette party for you. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. And then I'm
We'll
like,
try this again.
yeah. And this is where I would like promise myself, I'm like, just don't pounce on them right away and have another meltdown. This is the first time through this club. And then I didn't acknowledge them for like 10 or 12 minutes, and they walked out because I didn't say anything to them.
Wow.
And so I was just fucked either,
So you
both ways.
You got the worst of both.
Yeah, I didn't acknowledge them, so then they walked out.
Well, at
and I'm
least the
just
owner
like,
was on your side, though. I've seen a lot of times where there's nothing you can do like that, and a bunch of people walk out or whatever, and all of a sudden it's your fault because they're trying to make money with drink sales and food sales
Right.
or whatever. Suppose now you're chasing everybody out with
Yeah.
your cut. So at least he was on your side.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he brought more bachelor people back, but
Yeah.
and it's so funny too because again, like I don't want to like be biased or point anybody out, but it's so every comedian I ever talk to, all I have to do is like, hey, have you ever done a bachelorette party gig? And it's never good. It's never
No.
like, oh yeah, and it was fantastic. It was the most wonderful gig I've ever done in my life. Never have I heard that story.
Yeah. Once in a while, the best you can hope for sometimes is that this is like their first stop and they're just sort of bored and they're not drunk yet, and they just sort of, and then they at the next place they're going to get wild. That I've seen
But
them
they don't
behave
seem
before.
to come to the early shows. They seem to come to the late show,
Yeah.
which is the one right before midnight, and they've already had several drinks.
Well,
and-
because they know in the back of their mind that they're going to become a part of the show.
yeah,
one
I think
way
that's
or
why that's
another. And
part
so
of it too, is to
they
be
gotta get
an
the courage.
interactive. It's
Yeah.
like, it's this or karaoke, and I don't really feel like singing, so let's
So let's
Yeah.
go
Let's
let's
harass
get
a
involved
comic.
somewhere else. Yeah.
The worst thing I ever had, honestly, like fucking out of a comedy book, is that I was in Charleston, West Virginia, and it's not a bachelorette party, but there was a Christmas party for a company. This was at a hotel, and this company, they told us before the first show, there's 2 shows again, they're like, listen, this whatever company, they've been out by the pool, it was a covered pool and all this stuff, so they had rented that whole area, 60 people just drinking. Club manager's like, this is like 7:30 at night. She's like, they're going to come to the late show, and they have the first few rows as just their company, and they've been drinking since 5. I'm like, this is terrible.
That's good news for you.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
So we do the first show, get in our own self-absorbed world and forget about it. Then I'm co-headlining with a buddy of mine, and he goes up. They come in, not all 60 of them, but like 20 or 30 of them, and he goes up 45 minutes and does it on autopilot because they're just chatting through him. One guy is like right in front of him, 6 inches in front of him. It's a small stage and just has his back turned to him the whole time, which drives me nuts. And so I'm like, when I go up, I want to acknowledge this. And I said something immediately when I went up. I'm like, why you have your back turned to Jason? What the fuck is wrong with you? And he spun around, almost like a Wild West movie. 180 degrees, kicked his heels on the stage. And his legs were open, and I didn't know. And I sort of acted like I was going to reach for maybe his genitals, and he slapped the piss out of me.
Wow.
Like in the face?
Yeah, he caught me flush. And I didn't know what to do. I'm like, either fight or chew his ass, start yelling at him. So I started yelling at him. He seemed stunned that I didn't jump on him. They threw him out, but now I've lost the whole group. You know, those are all his friends and coworkers, so they hate me. Now there's girls like 5 minutes later getting up and like mooning me, pulling their dresses up. I yelled at them.
That's not too bad.
It wasn't too bad. And they were attractive, but
nice.
They were
how do
horrible.
you dig out of that hole when you've been slapped by a member of the audience?
It gets so much worse than that because here's what happened. It didn't stop there. It's like you get slapped, and then I went on, and there was a regular crowd behind this group that was sort of on my side. And then I tried to do some jokes, but it was still messy. I got into it with those two girls who showed me their ass, and they walk out with a guy. But I'm like chewing their ass as they leave, going around to the left. They can walk around sort of the backdrop. And one of them had a drink, and I just cursed them out all the way and then turned back to the audience. As soon as I turned back, I guess the guy grabbed the drink from the girl and threw it at me, and it shattered on my elbow, the glass.
Wow.
And the glass went into the audience, hit people in the back. Now the regular crowd's involved, hit some of their wives. Now they're fucking coming forward like a mob scene. Now there's no way to control it. I'm like, I'm going to get off stage, call the police. I'll come back up here if we can get this handled. And then the MC went back on stage and started dancing, like literally dancing.
Dancing?
Yeah,
Nice.
he didn't
Like
know
doing the
what the fuck
robot
to
or
do. He didn't know
whatever?
what the fuck to do.
How did you bail? Were you just like, thank you, good night? Or, I mean, you just...
I was like, I'm going to go off stage for a few minutes. I got to talk to the club manager. We're going to call the police, and then I'll come back up here. When we sort this, once all these people are out and we sort it out, and you guys can move up. And that's what I did. I went up like 10 minutes later, and the good crowd moved up, and we salvaged the show, and I got off stage to talking to the police department. And they're like, do you want to press charges? I'm like, yeah. They're like, well, I don't know if you live in West Virginia, but you're going to have to drive up here to testify. And I'm like, well, I don't know if I can get in trouble if I don't show up as a witness. So, no, all right, just get him the fuck out of the hotel. And they're like, okay.
You know what? I've heard stories like that about how, incidents happen to comedians, and then it's like, well, you don't even live in this state, so fuck you.
Yeah.
We're done.
It really is. There have been some times, where you are helpless up there. It feels like the good clubs have your back.
And so the crowd sat there, though, and they thought, well, okay, a little 10-minute interlude while they call the police and talk to everybody. Maybe we'll get some wings while we're there. That's funny.
But they were on my side because they saw it. I mean, as soon as I went up, they knew those people had been trouble to my buddy Jason for 45 minutes. And then when I went up, I got slapped within a minute of being on stage.
Oh, my God.
So they were definitely on my side and willing to do anything for me.
How did that not just enrage you and just, did you just like, okay, I'm just rolling to the next joke, and then we're just going to go from there?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know how I kept together. I was drinking at that time, too. So I don't know if that helped, but I was able to keep some kind of control.
So everyone in this situation was completely drunk.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't hammered or anything. I wasn't hammered. I still had, my wits about me.
The perfect storm.
So have you done West Virginia since then, or was that your last gig and you're like, fuck this place?
No, I just did it like 2 months ago. And the club manager, she's awesome. She's great. And the club staff, they were kicking people out. They were throwing them out immediately, but it was a lot to handle. They didn't have enough people to handle it. And you couldn't. There was like, I had 30 or so people in there that were out of control. And so they did what they could. And they've always had my back. And they still bring it up, like to this day. That was like 2005, too. And they still. Yeah. December of 2005, Christmas party. Charleston, West Virginia. Yeah, that's like the classic comedy book story of like, what's your worst experience? That's where it really got violent. Because I got slapped and hit with a glass.
I've never had a physical altercation. I've seen it, though. I've seen it happen in front of I saw Owen Straw once. At the Underground, as a matter of fact, on an open mic, like late at night, years ago. He
someone threw a drink at him on stage.
Yeah, and it was one of the funniest things I ever saw. And this is when I gained like so much respect for Owen. It was late at night. He was the last one going up, and it was just one of those open mics where bad comedy goes to die. And there's a guy in the back just all night long, just talking through everybody's sets. And, you know, this is an open mic, so most of these comics are green, and they don't really, you only have 3 minutes or whatever, so nobody's really, like, addressing it. Nobody's talking to the guy, and he's just trashing the whole night, on and on and on. And so Owen gets up there. He's the last guy, and he starts to go into his set, and Owen just doesn't care, you know. And the guy starts talking, and so Owen stops, and he's like, look, man, I mean, you know, I'm the last guy. There's like 2 more minutes, literally. You've been here for 3.5 hours or whatever, just talking and talking. Surely you can shut up for just 2 minutes. And the guy just like keeps responding back and saying stuff, and so Owen keeps talking to him and addressing it. And the guy like rushes the stage like he's gonna who knows what. And there's really maybe 3 people left, you know. It was a weird confrontation. He rushes the stage, and Owen is still just standing there with the mic, you know, like doesn't move, doesn't flinch, and he's just like, all right, I mean, should I tell a joke now? Are you gonna sit down? What's going on? And the guy, for whatever reason, is just enraged, and he takes his drink, and he throws it on Owen and just completely douses him. And again, Owen doesn't blink, doesn't flinch, he's still standing there right with the mic, and he looks at the guy and he goes, what am I, a witch? It was the funniest thing I'd ever, like, that was his reaction. Like, so many guys would have, who knows what, like, cocked the guy, jumped off the stage, started screaming and yelling, whatever, and he just didn't even blink, didn't even skip a beat, just, like, cracked a joke, and it was pretty funny. And then, of course, the guy got drug out or whatever, but that's the only time I've seen it, like, get physical.
I saw when Jim Short was in town, I think the time before last, and it was a late show, and these guys were all sitting up front, big ex-military guys or something, and like 4 of them, and they had been on their phones the entire show, sitting in the front with their phones down here underneath the table. And Jim has this bit about people being on their phones and, you know, this whole thing. So he starts going into the bit, and then he just started rail on him for, like, he's, you know, you're on your fucking phone, mate. And he just went into him about it and railed on him and you know, shamed them into submission, and then kept going. It got kind of awkward, you know, and then he saved it. He's like, yeah, I'm a dick, but he was a dick first, you know, and got out of it. And then after the show, I guess they were still pissed off. And the guy tried to charge Jim Short across that red pleather sort of couch in the back.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and his buddies had to drag him off, and I was like in between Jim Short and these guys, and was like, hey, man, look, we can't do this in here. But he's probably gonna, I mean, who knows?
Yeah. It's insane. I don't know. I mean, I haven't been in any fistfights because of comedy or anything like that. But
It's so weird, too. Like, why would people get enraged over comedy? It's like the opposite, like, reality. Like, I've never understood, like, especially people who are like, I don't find you funny, and therefore now I'm mad.
Yeah.
Like, that joke wasn't funny, and now I'm angry at you. Like, how does that even work? I don't understand that mentality.
No, I have no idea. I mean, we were sort of talking about that. Was it last night or something?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
don't know.
heard, I saw, I guess maybe it was on Twitter or something really briefly, and maybe I'm mistaken, because it would, sometimes on my recollections of my Twitter feed are like a fever dream, but something about Picasso's working and you're bumping his elbow.
Yeah.
Like,
It's like my line that I like to say.
yeah.
It's
So
just-
were you getting a little lip last night, or?
There was a drunk dude. He was pretty much, I don't think he was that big of a deal. Like, he was just talking, but he was drunk. He wasn't trying to come out in a mean-spirited way, but he was, talking. And I don't know, he interjected something, and then I was just like, you know, Picasso's trying to paint. Don't bump his elbow, which I like saying.
Did it shut him down?
Yeah, I mean, for a minute, yeah. And there were a couple more things he said, but it was nothing too crazy. And then there at the end, I think he sort of drifted off. I don't know. His buddies were cool.
Because we were watching him in the back, and he kind of started. He walked back to the bar, and then he got another beer, and then he sat down in the back, and Courtney was like, I think the alcohol is really starting to settle in, because he was sitting back there, and he got real quiet. Was trying to just maintain, I think.
Just trying to like stay like
Yeah, just
conscious
not-
at that
yeah,
point.
yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, and he said something about him being rich. I had some reference, and he
Oh,
said
yeah,
something
yeah.
about, well, I'm rich or something. Like, are you? And then we had to get into that. And then, but through that, I think he was lying to me, because his buddies goes, he's not rich, and it was all this wasted time. But then through that, I was able to get to an idea that I've never worked on stage. So I was sort of like, oh, I'm sort of happy you said that, because you spawned this other idea.
Did it work
that I-
out?
It's still a sloppy idea, but it got the first couple lines out, and I'm like, all right, that's enough. And the crowd was sort of, I just said that I got to work on a new idea because he interrupted, and the crowd appreciated that.
Do
So
you-
they were
do
like,
you-
all right.
Do you do a lot of writing on stage?
I mean, I'll try to get some more stuff. Like, I like to go up with something.
Yeah.
Just
That's a
like
good- got to go up with something.
No, I
That's
mean,
a
it's
good place
like-
to start.
I don't know. I like to have more than just the premise. I like to have the first punchline, what I think
Yeah.
the first funny thing is. I don't just take the idea and just start riffing on that necessarily. But I mean, yeah, set up and punchline. I feel like I have one funny line, and then I'll try to find the tag on stage. And if I can't find it in the heat of the moment, I'll sit back down and try to write the second line or the next angle on it to take it a new direction. So I'll do that. But yeah, I'll try to. I try to force myself to find it in the moment up there.
Yeah, sometimes it seems like it's just, I can't describe it, but everything seems just organically funnier when it happens on stage
Yeah.
than it does when it happens off the stage and you bring it to the stage. It's a weird
Right.
dynamic that is almost impossible to fake, you know?
Yeah.
Which, you know, sometimes when I write and it works out on stage, then I feel like, all right, well, now I'm done with that because I told it on stage. It'll never be as funny as that first time. So,
Yeah.
oh, well.
I know, and going back and the wording on it, and the technical side of it sometimes too, where you do it'll come out right, or it comes out wrong. You like, I know this is a funny premise, and it comes out clunky. Then I am better about sitting down now and like going, that doesn't sound good rhythmically. There's something wrong, and I've caught myself a few times, and I'm able to sit down now and go in the notepad, then put it right back on stage, and it works immediately. So like, I've gotten better at that side of it too, of like going, okay, not giving up on it, and going, maybe
Yeah.
it's just clunky or the wording's off.
Do you have a rule like 3 times and it's out, or?
No, not really. I'll do it if I still really like the idea and believe in it. I'll do it a long time.
Do you have a joke that is basically just for you? Like nobody ever laughs, nobody ever gets it, but you're just like, you know what? It's just for me now.
I've had, I definitely have tags like that all
Yeah.
over the place. Fucking, I have 100 tags on stage that, I mean, they might work, I don't know, 20% of the time. I don't know. And sometimes they'll really hit. And I think they're the funniest things in my act sometimes. But it's just, they're never going to be 100%. Never. And so I have those. And then there's a couple bits, too, that I try to force on stage. Usually the stuff that's a little more morose and the darker stuff that I'll do in a hard-headed way. And just like, I know this is funny. I just think they're taking this really hard. I just think it's bumming them out somehow. I got to find it. And it's probably just not funny enough. Because they'll go in some dark places. It's just,
Well, sometimes it's a fine line, too, because when you're telling kind of a morbid or morose joke, people get sad, and they're like, oh, that's sad. I used to have a bit that I would do about, and again, like you say, maybe sometimes these bits just aren't funny, but I used to have a bit that I would do about maybe Buddha didn't really attain enlightenment. Maybe he just had a brain tumor, and this was symptomatic of his tumor just growing larger and larger.
Yeah.
And I was doing this at a show one night, and I literally, I was getting nothing. Like, it was just flatlining. And then I heard somebody in the back say, that's sad. Like, just like that, like right in the middle of it. And then it was, like, so deflating for me because I was like, wow, this is just, like, the opposite of what is supposed to be happening right now.
yeah.
But they take it serious. It's weird. So
And you
It
can't
is very
tell
strange.
because sometimes you don't. I mean, I've gotten the same joke will get a groan one time and it'll get a great laugh the next time, and
yeah,
you know,
yeah. Well, I guess just recently,
maybe depending on where you place it, you know what I mean, something a little further deeper.
Yeah, I had a
the
joke
set?
that I told one time, and it was a bestiality joke, and I was trying to play it off like how is it cruelty to animals when this is probably like the greatest thing that's ever happened in this horse's life? You know, like I had this whole bit, like, of course, again, probably not the best bit ever, but I told it one time, and it got the reaction that you would expect a terrible bit like that to get. It was just like everybody hated me and thought less of me for saying it. And then just last Monday at the Underground, for whatever, I put a tag out there, and people kind of groaned a little bit, ooh. And for whatever, I was like, okay, well, listen to this. And for the first time in a year or so or whatever, I went back into that bit. And it killed. Like, people
Wow.
loved
Yeah.
it. It was just like the difference of when I told it and what the environment was before telling it,
And
Yeah.
I think sometimes they can appreciate when you commit to it too. You know, like if you have a joke and you tag it a couple times, the first tag they're like, and then you just keep tagging it and they're like, okay, I can respect. I can respect
he's
that.
not putting it down. So
Yeah.
Yeah, you stand on it. And
Yeah.
sometimes it is the placement of a joke in your set, too. Sometimes it's just like, I try to move it around before I give up on it,
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't go in the beginning. Maybe it is in the middle. But then there's some jokes, too, that I get caught doing these fucking jokes that I believe in that I'm really happy at check drop. And that's another terrible idea, that they just cannot weather the check drop. And so you're like, where do I put it now? I can't go up front, can't close on it, can't put it, and it can't fall in that 5 or 10 minutes around the check drop. I got to put it, but it doesn't fit in that first 10 minutes, and then it's always like, all right.
That's
And
interesting, the check drop, because that's something that probably comedians don't even consider until you start headlining and doing those closing spots where you deal with that, right?
Yeah, it can be really tough. And if it's some of your stuff that people have to really be listening to, and then, I mean, something's going to suffer usually. Rarely do you have a check drop where you see tabs coming out and then everybody's just is able to just pay and look back up.
Right.
But sometimes it's a little more, there's sometimes it feels like it's 10 minutes long. Other times it feels like it's a minute and a half. But if you have your stuff there's just some stuff that works better there than others. And, yeah, I mean, I try to just go right through it and not acknowledge it and whatever, but usually there is a dip, and hopefully they bounce back. But I have like a bit that's sort of dark, or it's just sort of a morose thing about that I don't watch my favorite celebrities or rock stars, musicians on YouTube anymore play these big venues like Wembley Stadium, Madison Square Garden. Because I used to put myself in their position and go, what do I feel like to play in front of that many people? I stopped doing that. I realized it's not unrealistic. It's unrealistic for my life. So here's what I caught myself doing. I look up my favorite rock stars, musicians. I look up the hotels they died in and see if I can afford to stay there. Like Whitney Houston died in the Beverly Hilton. I can't afford that.
Yeah.
However, Janie Lane, the lead singer of Warrant, drank himself to death at the Comfort Inn in Woodland Hills, California. That's $84 a night. I do that. And so I do that, and I don't mean to be doing jokes on this thing, but that whole thing, I think sometimes that joke misses not only because of that, it's about suicide, is that some people don't know who Janie Lane. Like, I understand a 22-year-old doesn't know the lead singer of Warrant. So there's a lot of ways that bit can miss. If that one falls in check drop, it's fucked. But then I can take that thing and open on it in New York, and it's fine.
Well, you're not going to kill when the checks are being dropped anyways. I mean, you're chasing a dragon there, like trying to figure out, like, okay, I'm finally going to have that joke where, like, all the checks, because people, let's face it, comedy audiences are stupid. I think that's what I'm trying to say, basically.
That is all.
They can't process too many things at once, I guess, well, and it's funny, too, because every time I talk to a comic about a comedian or a comedy show, the conversation always becomes so technical, and you lose sight of the fact, I guess, after you perform for a while, that a lot of people who go to these shows operate under this assumption that it's just a funny guy who just goes up there and he's just saying whatever comes off the top of his head, and it just happens to, and they have no idea, like you were saying earlier about rhythm and timing and everything else. Nobody has any, or very few people have any idea.
I think that's the end goal, though, right? Is to sort of that Zen approach where you make it effortless again.
It's true. I think, like Bill Hicks had a line about how, like, the jokes are what you go to when you run out of stuff to talk about, But that gets back to, like, writing on stage and whatever. And man, it might be a long time before I ever reach that point where you can just go up there and just start talking and just start writing on stage. Because I always at least seem to, like, try to set the bar, like, high, like, for whatever reason. It's a weird, I was thinking about this last night. It's kind of a weird paradox that stand-up comics are in, because of course you care about getting a laugh, and of course you care about how it goes, or why else are you doing it, You want people to have a good time, and you want that adulation or whatever. But at the same time, the more you're dependent on that laugh, the worse it's probably going to go, because that's kind of like a lack of faith in the material, and the audience kind of senses that. And so it's this weird place, like, you kind of get to this place where you really don't care how the audience responds, but then still somewhere in the back, obviously, it's a weird, like, razor's edge that you have to really kind of find to get up there and do that.
I get what you're saying.
Absolutely.
I heard a good thing. I can't remember the guy's name, but he's a magician. He has an act, and he has jokes, and he's performed for these presidents and the Queen of England, all these people.
I got to learn some magic.
Yeah. It's that's another good go-to. But he said something like, don't make the audience feel responsible for laughing. So I sort of approached it like you go up there and you got your stuff, but there is that point where it's like, okay, this is what I'm going to get, and I'm not going to sort of harangue them for not getting the response that I think it deserves. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, there's always that balance that I don't know. That is a really hard thing to find, because I'm capable of going up. I mean, I don't know. It's sort of the way I've lived my life, though. I can care too much, or I don't give a fuck at all, and I can never find that middle. Just carrying right in the middle. I guess that's the healthy place, but because I guess it is. But I can't find that in my life or sometimes on stage. Because I'm capable. I could go in front of an audience if there were no consequences for it and just fucking eat shit for 45 minutes in front of 200 people, and it wouldn't. I could sleep.
Yeah,
I could do that. And I don't want to do that because I want to get laughs. But then there's the thing of caring too much. It's hard to find that middle where you're like, all right, I'm loose. But it's not to the point where I totally don't give a shit.
Well, your bio says you're an only child with OCD,
Yeah.
and and it reminds me because James mentioned the word harangue just a minute ago, and I saw that
Harangue.
your dysfunction. You channel your dysfunction into a quote unquote cathartic harangue.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. So if you don't know what a cathartic harangue is, you must see this gentleman's comedy. But do you think that kind of had an influence on you choosing to be a stand-up comedian, sort of being an only child and growing up in that environment? And I don't know, like, how extreme this OCD is, like if you just wash your hands a lot or if you're the next Howie Mandel or...
No, my OCD is a different thing where it's I'm not really a germphobe.
Those are two different things, right?
Well, I think you can be obsessive-compulsive
Or it's a spectrum?
Probably, because I know, for example, Howie Mandel's a germaphobe, but like it kind of results in obsessive-compulsive, like cleaning.
I know a lot of
rituals
comedians that are germophobes, though, so it is kind of interesting. Maybe there's a correlation.
Well,
between
the stand-up comedy mic is the filthiest thing in the known
Yeah.
universe, though. I mean, how could you like be a germaphobe? And like, unless you bring, like, actually, there used to be this local girl who would go around and she would bring her own little whatever they call
I
it,
have some
just put it
spray.
over the top, and she would put it over there, and then she would say, "I practice safe comedy," and that was like her opener whenever she would do that.
They
But
do
so-
make that, though. They make a microphone sort of antiseptic. I have some in the back because the open mic sometimes there's guys that put
They get funky,
ketchup
man.
on their face
Yeah.
and then do a set. I'm a T-Rex,
I've
It's like,
seen
okay,
people
buddy.
put the mic down their pants before. which
Yeah,
is a
stuff like
bad
that, you know?
idea. So did it have an influence on you becoming a stand-up comedian?
The OCD. By the way, my OCD is like the germphobe, but I'm not really into that yet. I'm sure it'll grow into that. Maybe
Working
but
on it.
fucking, yeah, like now I'll obsess about, like when I told you 3 minutes ago about the dead celebrity hotel thing, I'm like, I told it in a real sloppy. The setup is not exactly. I didn't do it properly. That's what I've been
You didn't
obsessing
kill,
about
man.
for
You didn't
three.
kill with the-
Because I was like, no, I didn't fucking do that properly.
I
I'm
didn't
like,
sell 'em on it.
Because I wasn't standing up here. I wasn't
Well,
prepared to do the joke. You probably didn't want to hear the joke, but I'm like, I could. No. So for the last 3 minutes, I'm in my head. I'm like, that's not the setup of the fucking joke. You didn't even do it
But for
properly.
a comic, that's kind of common to like obsess over your material because
Yeah.
that's how you write materials. Like, oh, I got to move this word here and change this word and whatever. So that's not really that bad.
Yeah,
I think.
I guess that's sort of healthy. But I mean, I lose it with like locks, car doors, locking a hotel.
So
or my
you'll leave your
apartment.
place and then you'll be a block away and go, did I lock the front door?
Yeah.
Shit. And then have you gone back?
Yeah, back up the steps. Like when I pack, I'm flying out tonight. When I pack, I'll pace the room after everything's packed and by the door for 45 minutes to an hour until I'm sweating, looking under beds and shit like
'Cause
that.
you don't
I
want
mean,
to miss anything.
Miss
What
anything.
would happen if you like left a sock behind? Or so would that be like a travesty? Or
Is
I
that
would
what
lose
it-
my mind. It would haunt me. If I got on the plane tonight and I know that I lost a sock, it would fucking follow me. I would carry that all the way to New York.
you'd be frantically calling the hotel. Look,
Yeah.
this sock. It's important. It's got to get
Yeah.
back to me. First class, overnight, whatever it takes. I need that sock.
Yeah.
How about stuff like say this is your place and I have my water here and then I set it over here. If that wasn't in the spot that you
No,
do you
not
get
like
OCD
that.
like that where everything's
No.
got to be sort of in a certain place?
No,
on the
occasionally I
coffee
see
table
myself
or-
lining things up, but it's not crazy yet. I think some of that's just.
It's kind of
organizing.
ironic with the packing because as a touring comic, I mean, you pack like at least, who knows, like 3-4 times a week.
Yeah.
I mean, and was that from the very first tour ever? Did it slowly sort of?
Well, I was
become a
drunk
thing?
for 8 years and I didn't give a shit what I left. But when I sobered up, each year that I stay sober, I guess maybe because my buddies tell me that you haven't dealt with why you drank or what's really going on deep down inside you. And I probably haven't dealt with it. And that's why it's all each year I'm becoming more and more eccentric or strange or picking up these habits because I don't know what's going on in me. But I mean, I did leave my iPad at a hotel like a month ago. And that was almost the end of my life.
That would be huge for me too, just because they're an expensive piece of electronics. But
Do you have renter's insurance?
No, and I fucking...
See that? I mean, that might alleviate. Get renter's insurance if you lose something. Say, hey, it got stolen. And
so
then
what
you can-
happened with the iPad? Were there like jokes on? Have you ever lost a joke book or anything like that?
Never
or?
lost a joke book. No, but I had some stuff like saved in the notes section. I always, feared it has a screen lock and all that stuff, and I'm like, someone could easily hack into that, I would think. But I left it. I was at a casino in Minnesota and went to the Starbucks in the lobby, and the other comic, we were leaving early in the morning, so I just jumped in the car half asleep. And it has a black case, and it blended in with the countertop at Starbucks. We didn't realize we were an hour away, and he had to be back. We had no time to turn back around, and I called the hotel. Luckily, it was a casino hotel, so the security is pretty good.
Yeah.
And some manager went down, and she's like, I've got it. It was the best thing ever because she reassured me all the way. For a person with OCD, she was the most amazing fucking human being because she goes, I have it in my possession. She goes, I'm going to turn it over to security. They will have it. I'm like, listen, I don't live in Minnesota. I'm leaving in 2 days. Can you overnight it? And she's like, let me see. I'm like, I'll pay for it. Then she just called me back, and she goes, here's a tracking number. It'll be there tomorrow morning by 10 a.m.
Wow.
Like every step of the way, she calmed my nerves.
That's service.
And it was there at like 9:30 in the morning, and I'm like, oh, this is the most amazing woman that I've ever.
Now, had it been a sock, you might not have got that same level of service, but
I can next day
true.
air the sock. 2-day air.
that sock is going ground. All right, I'm sorry. That's funny.
But yeah, that kind of stuff. I mean, I've just gotten really. Yeah, the anxiety and the OCD. It's just I'm picking up new things. It's
So it
getting-
wasn't when you were a kid, and it wasn't when you were drinking because you were just too drunk to, and then suddenly one day you thought, imagine the money I'll save on socks, and you stopped drinking.
Yeah.
But now there's this, so you think the OCD is still...
Well, I think, I used to do Tai Chi, and I talked one time with my teacher. I was like, hey, how do you get rid of
to
a
do Tai Chi?
It's a long story.
It's the
Yeah.
fucking-
But
Who does Tai Chi? I don't
Yeah.
think you're the first dude.
I used to
I've
play
ever
basketball, and I had bad knees and a bad back, and nothing worked. I went to
met.
specialists.
Except ancient Chinese
Yeah,
yoga.
and nothing worked. I went to specialists. They told me to do these different, stretches and stuff, and take a certain pill or whatever. And then someone had a printout of the newspaper, this article about Tai Chi and how it, old people do it. It's healthful and rejuvenating. So I did it, and I mean, my back pain and my knee pain went away, man. It worked. I started getting super healthy. I got a neti pot, started eating like Ayurvedic.
Look at this.
Yeah, this is years ago. Now I'm just, I chain smoke cigarettes. And,
Yeah,
I was going to say, it's what
I
happened
mean,
to that temple?
today I had a coffee and then I had chicken wings, so it's completely gone. But what our teacher said, he said, I said to him one time, how do you get rid of a bad habit? And he said, replace it with a new one,
With a new
Really?
bad habit, though?
or just a new habit.
That's not necessarily great
know.
advice.
So
Really?
so I'm thinking maybe it's like you don't drink anymore, so now you there's got to be something that takes the place of whatever psychic energy that you expended doing the drinking and the partying. And
Well, I
then,
think-
I got to do something.
I think he was saying earlier, though, that maybe there was some deep psychological issue that was the cause of the drinking, and now that he stopped drinking but not addressed that cycle, and I don't want to psychoanalyze you, but here we are.
Yeah, sure.
And so now the OCD is the result of whatever. And, I don't want to go too deep and psychoanalyze you, but you did mention earlier, I guess you have a bit about... perhaps being molested as a child, so I don't want to put the whole thing together. But it's out there now, so I said that, and I'm just saying. One
Yeah.
thing I love about hanging out with comics is you can say anything. To
Yeah,
a comedian.
absolutely. And the molested thing is just me recklessly saying molested because I bumped butts with another kid in my neighborhood.
Well, maybe.
And I like saying I was molested, and so then it's the story of that did sort of
Maybe the butt bumping was a little more meaningful.
more of a profound impact on my life. It is weird though. Like there are some stuff, and like my friends who are recovering alcoholics or drug addicts or whatever, they go to treat. And one of my best friends, Taylor, he was like that. He's like, man, you got to address. And other friends have said that they've gone to treatment or know the programs and stuff. Like you haven't really fixed anything. You stayed sober, but you've got to sort of
Well,
get
I've
to
heard
the bottom
a
of some
lot
shit.
of comics say that stand-up comedy is therapeutic,
Yeah.
and I can see how that would be in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm not a perfect individual, and I can't really describe how it changes a person. But if you do it enough times and you get up there enough times and have enough great sets or whatever, it's sort of it is therapeutic in a
Yeah.
weird sort of
But
way.
I also think you get to a point to where instead of doing, topical Jay Leno type jokes, you start developing a
Yeah.
self-awareness of who you are and
well, that's what
the
happens.
things that you want to talk about, and that sort of happens through just developing a point of view.
Yeah,
and-
when you first start out, it seems like you've got one-liners
Not
and
that I can
jokes
do
and
that,
whatever. Yeah, I can't either. But it seems like there's a universal graduation for most people where they just have their jokes and their one-liners or whatever, and then eventually you start talking about yourself and your family or whatever, and then you just kind of go deeper and deeper, I guess.
Yeah, but that's what I would think with you is
Absolutely.
that some of that self-awareness through comedy and analyzing yourself for comedy purposes would also lend itself to sort of. I mean, I don't know if there are. You say Taylor said something about,
Yeah, because it's the offstage
figuring
stuff.
that out,
It does
but-
help me with shows, if I can have a decent show. It doesn't have to be the greatest show in the world, but it does sort of make me feel better. And if I get too long without a show, I think the line is like 10 days without a show where I start to really get uncomfortable and
It's
anxious.
funny, and you kind of have to ask yourself, like, is that therapy or is that an addiction? It's
Yeah.
almost like, do I miss the
I don't have
therapeutic
that-
effect, or am I
I
just
don't
addicted
think you have to
the
ask
whole?
yourself that. I think it's pretty clear that it's an addiction, or I wouldn't say an addiction, but a compulsion.
Yeah, it's
You
definitely
know?
a compulsion with
Yeah.
me. Well, and I read somewhere too about they say that the reason that gamblers get addicted to gambling is they're not addicted to winning all the time, and obviously they're not addicted to losing, but what they're actually addicted to is that not knowing, that moment when it could go either way, because that's where the biggest rush
The
in it is.
uncertainty.
Yeah, and I think comics are like that a lot too, like right before you go up. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people probably don't think about it that deeply, but for me anyways, there's always that moment where I'm thinking, all right, this could go well or it could go poorly. You never really know.
Yeah.
And it almost seems like that's where the biggest rush is. It's kind of hard to admit it, but it's
Yeah.
almost not necessarily the sets that kill, but just that moment before you go up where you're like, I wonder how this is going to work out.
Yeah.
And I seem to notice when there is that uncertainty, it actually goes better than if you're like, I'm going to go up there and fucking rock these
Oh,
people.
that's when I die.
And then you go up there and you just, next thing you know,
Yeah.
you're eating your dick.
Yep.
And you're like, what happened? But if you're just like, oh shit, I don't know if they're gonna like me, and you're in this weird loop of doubt, and then you go up there and you're like, oh, they do, and then that sort of gives you even more a spike in that sort of rush.
Well,
know?
and I guess part of the reason I originally asked is it just seems like universally, almost every stand-up comic I've met has unabashedly said, "Oh well, I've certainly got issues, and stand-up comedy has somehow become an outlet for that."
But sometimes that rush has gotten lesser and lesser. Like I remember when I started, it was a humongous rush, and it's like you're nervous and you feel like you're walking up the
Yeah.
gallows. And now I almost don't even. I'm just thinking about, okay, this is the jokes, and I'm doing this, and then.
It depends on the room.
And then
for
you
me.
figure
Yeah.
you got to start getting, that's what we're talking about, using drugs or doing coke before you go on stage. Like I can even imagine doing something like that because you're already.
This is a weird thing that I noticed too, because I like to have a little bit of nervous energy before I go on stage, where it's controllable and all that, But some of my best sets, I started noticing like a trend where I would fly into these cities, like sometimes cross country, day of the show, to Arizona or wherever, and it's just a morning flight out of New York, drag ass with no sleep, because I had an hour and a half in my bed. Then I sleep on the flight an hour, then I get a hotel, sleep another hour, show up to do 2 shows in Arizona or Colorado or some shit like that. And those were started to be the best shows of the week for me. I don't know if I just got lucky and that's the way it panned out, but I noticed that like 10 or 20 times over the last couple of years, I've noticed that the Thursday or whatever the first show is, that because I go dragging myself on stage physically. I mean, aware mentally.
Does it feel like work at that point?
No, it almost feels like you're a little dizzy and you're just tired and you have to go up. And I think it's more, honestly, make it more conversational because you're so tired that you're actually more genuine. You don't have enough energy to go up there and do this
on
big
an
show.
act.
And you don't have enough time or energy to sit there and go, what if that fucking joke, what if this, or
Yeah.
anticipate everything.
That
You
kinda
just
gets to-
walk up there like a fucking person who's going to tell a story, and you stay in the moment more.
Yeah, and that kind of gets to what we were saying earlier, where you're finding that line between not caring but
Yeah.
really caring. You're just too tired to care at that
Right.
point, and it works out. Did it get harder to, at least for a while, to go up when you stopped drinking? Did you feel like, drinking really fueled the comedy? Because I've heard a lot of people say that. Like, I never drink when I do
Yeah.
stand-up. But, sometimes I smoke a little. But like James was saying, it took a long time for me to get, like, that comfortable, like, to go up on stage, which is different because a lot of people seem like the first, they drink right away before they go up on stage because that makes them more comfortable.
Right.
Whereas, like, with pot, it's almost like it makes you feel like it's even more intense up there,
Yeah.
So it takes a little bit longer. It took longer for me.
Yeah.
But so was it difficult when you first, like, do you remember your first sober set, or did you not drink that frequently, or?
I was drinking every night there at the end, but usually, if it was a 2-show night, I'd have a couple beers. I knew I had to pace it. A couple beers, maybe a shot on the first show, then 2 or 3 more shots for the late show and beers. So I could get through the 2 shows. Then there were a handful of times where the late show was a disaster. I blacked out, and there at the
Nice.
tail end, it was getting like that. It was getting really
Blackout
bad.
comedy. So you would woke up.
But
and
you would do the show and Just wake up the next day.
Like, did you have recordings to make sure that, like, you stuck to the material? So you would just wake up and you would be like, well, I did a show last night. I wonder how it went.
The other comics would tell me. It's only a handful of times that I do something where I go, I don't remember the set. I don't remember the late show at all.
Wow.
And, one time I got fired for that. Well, because I guess I did my set.
Well, you didn't get fired for not remembering, I'm assuming.
No, not remembering, but I did my set. According to the other comic, it went fine. I'm going, there's no way it went fine. There's no fucking way. He's like, no, you did your jokes. It was great.
So
and
why
then,
did you get fired?
Because during his set, he was closing. This is years ago. He was closing. He said there was a staircase on the side of the stage, and I just walked up in his last 5 minutes, and he's like, what the fuck are you doing up here? And I was like reaching for my zipper, like to pull my nuts out or whatever, and he pushed me, and I fell towards the backdrop. And then when I got up, he's like, you were trying to pull your dick out. I'm like, I never pull my dick out. I pull my nuts out.
That's a difference.
That's an old Navy
And my
trick.
genitals, some genitals were coming out. Some skin, something was coming out. And so then the bouncer grabbed me and took me off stage. And he finished up his show. I don't know how he got through with it. I don't know what the crowd thought. I don't remember any of this.
Yeah, I wonder what the crowd reaction was to that moment.
Yeah, and I went running through the tables. Evidently, the bouncers wanted me out. He's like, I'll take him back to the hotel. And they're like, he's got to go now. And they were putting me in cabs. And I was jumping out the other side of the cabs.
Nice.
Going, catch me if you can and all this.
Catch me if you can.
And so I went back to the hotel, and I was in his room. He said he was 5 minutes behind me, and when he got back, it was one of these shitty, like, motor lodge little things where the room's on the ground floor facing out, and I was in his room pissing out onto the sidewalk. And he didn't know how I got the key, and I'm like, I don't know. I was a resourceful drunk. And then I went back to my room. I guess he put me to bed. I don't remember any of this, and then I remember the hotel phone ringing. And it was the booker, like, well, you're fired. You know what you did? And I'm like, no, I don't. But I did have that feeling in my gut, like I did something bad. Like
Something happened.
Something happened.
Normally when you wake up and you don't remember, it's probably not good,
Yeah.
whatever it was that happened.
Oh, it was terrible. That was the last 6 months of my drink. Everything was falling apart. Every 2 days, there was a new disaster in my life. That was just the thing that happened.
So
that
were
weekend.
other people kind of saying something to you, or were you just kind of like, I'm kind of just, I think I need to rein it in a little bit. I mean,
No, people have been saying it a long time, and then I admitted it myself. But I thought it was funny in a twisted way. I would admit that I was an alcoholic. I thought it was hilarious to me. I mean, I don't know if I really accepted it.
Well, and it kind of is funny. I mean, say that. You got some great stories out of it. Look, you're not in prison. You didn't kill anybody.
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
done with the drinking. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it worked itself out.
It did.
And I'm sure you've been back to that club and patched it up with that booker.
Yeah, patched it up with a booker. Yeah, it really did. I got myself to a place, though, where I was like, when I finally quit, when I went to jail for the 911 call and stuff, is that
You went for the 911
I
call
prank called 911 and threatened all kinds of shit. And I don't really remember.
in a drunken stupor.
Yeah, I woke up in jail with a ticket stuck to my face. And
With the ticket stuck to your face.
Yeah.
Is that how they gave it to you, or was it just on the floor?
I
and you-
think I was irate, and they put me in a holding cell, and the ticket was stuck to my face, and whatever bologna sandwich in the brown paper bag they gave me was destroyed. I had thrown it against the wall.
But
and-
somehow managed to keep track of the ticket.
Ticket was just stuck with dried saliva right to my face. And so, I woke up and pieced it together, and everybody left me in there for 2 days. And when I got out, I never drank again.
wow.
Never.
Well, that's probably a cry for help if I've ever heard one. If you call 911 and just threaten all sorts, because you're not going to get away with that.
No.
Like somebody's
From
gonna
a cell
show
phone,
up.
from my cell phone, too.
Yeah, somebody's going to show up and have a problem with
Yeah.
that little scenario. You know that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So.
It did, and it was, it was a laundry list of things that led up to that. It
Yeah,
crescendoed
but man,
into
if you're
that.
going to go out with a bang.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And what was the did they just say, okay, well, pay us a fine, or?
It was weird because I got some jailhouse advice. My friends were like, tough love. They're going to leave me in. They were tired of my shit. And so they left me in. I couldn't get a bail bondsman because it was a misdemeanor. He's like, it's too low. I'm not coming to get you out. I didn't know how much money I had in my bank account because I was pretty much broke from drinking everything. And
Being a comic.
Yeah, and being a comic, absolutely. And so some guy in jail was like, he read the ticket. First of all the inmates were confused by like, what the fuck did you do? What is this? Because they're all in for domestic violence.
Yeah.
And fucking,
They're like, this is a new one. This is interesting.
and misuse of 911. And the guy's like, you have an arraignment. I got arrested on Wednesday night. They're like, you have an arraignment on Friday at 1 o'clock. Just see the judge, plead guilty. They'll count it as time served. 2 days in, we'll cover a misdemeanor. And I fucking had no choice, so I just did that. And he was right. They just go, okay, don't ever call 911 again. And they released me 12 hours later. No, didn't pay a penny because they count 2 days for misdemeanors.
And where was this?
Charlotte, my hometown.
Oh, it's Charlotte.
Yeah, so I just never drank again. Never went to treatment, never did anything, and that was it. But I knew at that time, I was like, if I don't stop drinking now, I'm going to be dead, prison. I'm definitely not going to be able to be booked. Enough bookers knew that I was like getting a little loose on the late shows, and fucking my nuts had been out. And
It's danger. This guy's nuts have been out. We don't know. He's off the radar now. It's getting a little weird. Well,
Yeah.
you know, and it's crazy because comedy usually does not happen where there is no alcohol being served.
Yeah.
You know, and so you see it a lot. A lot of comics go in deep with the booze, and it's tough to stay away. You know, it can be problematic.
But you know what? The shows weren't that hard to do. Like the shows, I guess that transition wasn't bad. It was the downtime away from the shows. Like, what am I going to do in Jacksonville, Florida, by myself in a hotel room? That was what worried
that's why,
me.
I was listening to Bill Burr, and he's been to like every stadium and ballpark in the country because when he goes places, he'll go to every sporting event they have in that town just for something to do during the day, as opposed to just get into that comedic rut where you sit in the condo and you're smoking weed all day. Or
Doesn't Craig Gass do something like that too?
Craig Gass schedules his tours around
Like
the Mariners
games
and
or
the
something.
Seahawks
Yeah.
road schedules,
You know what?
so that he goes to whatever city where there's a Seahawks game that Sunday or something.
You know what? I think I damaged myself so much, too, from those drinking days. I traumatized myself. The travel day, when I finish a week at a club, I still feel this to this day. I've been sober 7 years. But if travel day's a Sunday, like today or Monday, every day, like when I get on that plane or in my car, I always have a feeling of guilt or something. Like I go, what the
like,
fuck did
what
I do? What
wrong?
did,
Oh,
and I
shit.
can't shake that. Travel days are really tough. There's sometimes where I'm really got this fucking sinking feeling and like, I don't know, because I used to leave a lot of towns going, what the fuck?
Just
Am I
burning
going
them
back?
down.
Yeah, and I'm like, and I still travel with that. Like, travel days are weird. I feel this weird, I don't know how to explain it.
That's
a
funny.
sick
7
feeling.
years
Yeah.
later.
I don't know.
Well, the good news is, I mean, there's nothing to worry about. So
You haven't got an email from some girl that's pregnant or something?
No.
What did
It's
I
all
do?
pretty no. I'm all right. So yeah.
You know Screamin' Jay
pretty-
Hawkins, that old R&B saxophone guy
he's gay.
from the 50s? Yeah, he's no, he's got like 55 kids. Like
Jesus.
and that's just the documented from the it was the 50s, it's the Chitlin circuit. They weren't wearing condoms, and he'd go from Jacksonville, Mississippi to Tupelo and just some juke joint and just
Wow.
Well, I
55 confirmed kids and like 100 and something, 119 grandkids.
Well, and I hear a lot of the goals. I don't know if it's changed, but I think the goals of a lot of road comics are to bag a waitress, at all the different clubs. So, I wouldn't be. There's got to be some comics out there that have 55 kids. Maybe we just don't know about.
Yeah.
You got any waitress kids out there?
No, I don't. I had a couple scares along the way in the last 15 years, but everything, no children.
Nice.
But I think I have some problems with my prostate too that maybe have helped. And my epididymis and vas deferens that have sort of, helped with that.
Thank God for the issues with the prostate.
My doctor told me, he goes, listen, because I got all these prostate problems or whatever I think they are. And he goes, well, you got a little situation that you have varicocele veins in your testicles and all this stuff. And he goes, if you ever want to have kids and you have trouble, it's probably because of this. So we can do a minor corrective surgery if you ever have trouble. So in a way, he's like, I don't know.
Surgery on your balls.
Yeah, he's like, it's not even anything. So really, I might be in a perfect spot because I might, if all those
Oh,
years
it's
when I
like
was
without
reckless,
having to get a vasectomy, you're sort of you've had nature's vasectomy.
And I could have kids with a small little surgery. Like if he goes, you want to have them someday, and if you have, he's not convinced.
Man, that's the way it should be by default, man.
Yeah,
like,
you'd
by
think.
default, you should shoot blanks, and then later, if you decide, it's like, all right, we can fix that.
I don't know.
That's
The
way-
vasectomy just sounds
Man.
god awful. Even
Dude, I'm
there's a couple
never-
comics
no.
who have had
Yeah.
it done and they talk about it, and it's like,
Ugh.
you tell me they just go in there and tie these tubes together, just tie a knot in your fucking sperm tube. That just sounds ridiculous. That doesn't
There's
sound very
something
advanced.
just innately instinctual deep within me that refuses to let scalpels get near my genitals.
Yeah.
in any
Well,
way,
I'll tell you
shape,
what.
or
Hey, I'll tell
form.
you. I
It's
didn't
not
get
happening.
circumcised till I was 17, so I definitely
Jesus.
don't. I don't want anything done.
That was by accident, by a rusty Coke can.
well,
so that
yeah,
was
the girl had braces, but listen, it's not important.
boom. That's funny.
Tom Simmons. You know Tom Simmons, the comedian? He's very
I
funny.
know the name. I've
know
never
the
seen.
I
him.
love Tom Simmons. He does, first of all, on Twitter, he has pew tweets. He goes to different church services and tweets from the pews.
Oh, that's funny.
But he did just live tweet his vasectomy
Really?
a few
Jesus
weeks ago, so you
Christ.
should look that up. Yeah, it's
Jesus.
pretty funny, man. He's fucking hilarious.
Wow, that's what Twitter was made for, right there. That's live tweeting your vasectomy.
Yeah.
So they didn't put you under for that. They just give you a local.
I think he
and
stayed
then-
up the whole time. Yeah, I didn't
Oh
get to
my
read every
God.
tweet, but yeah, the build up to it from him going in the chair on the table or whatever they do to you, all the way through it. No, I respect that. He's a hilarious genius guy, so it's good. I'm gonna go back and read them all. But yeah, I don't know. So I don't know if I know, but no kids for me.
Yeah,
I
me
know
either.
that.
Me either. I don't have kids, and I don't plan on. Man, it's just because I know what I was like as a kid, and I couldn't ever like if I had a kid and it was anything even remotely like me, like I wouldn't want to pay for that. I wouldn't want to
Right.
have anything to do
Oh, I
with
know.
that. Like I would be the worst father ever if I was raising a little me, because I'd be like, you know what? I know what you're going to get into, and
Yeah.
I'm tapping. I'm done. I'm done already. You just go.
Yeah.
If it's a boy or a girl, do you think it's the same or?
It might be a little bit different, but then the problem is, if it's a girl, it would be exactly like my girlfriend, so I'm still tapping. I'm still not
Yeah.
paying for that. I'm still not raising that.
I look at it too, where I was like, all right, so my mom had to raise me by herself. My aunt, my grandmother had to raise me, but then, until 18. But I continued to be a maniac, drunk until I was 30. So she got all these fucking extra years of just having to look after me too, that I feel guilty for to this day, that I really didn't fucking get my shit straight. And I mean, I don't know if I've got it truly straight now, but where I don't worry her sick until I was 30 years old. She got an extra 12 years on top of that she shouldn't have had to deal with, and I feel terrible about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I used to drink pretty hard too, starting at a young age, and I still drink, but man, not like I used to, man. Like I
Yeah.
used to is just way out of control. So yeah, I wouldn't want to raise a kid.
Well, by being a mother is hard. I think it's difficult. I mean, emotionally, right? And
I get. When are you going to
Sort
start
of-
spitting out babies, Milton?
Yeah, come on.
I was unemployed a couple of years ago, and so I was trying to get some spare money, and I went down to I was going to go to the sperm bank and see if I could make some money, but they do some sort of freezing test with your sperm to
To
see if
it'll survive.
yeah, and I guess I didn't pass the test, so I don't even. Maybe
Oh.
I have a low
You got bitch
Yeah.
sperm.
count, or they're just who knows what the deal is. But maybe I can't have kids. Maybe I have. Maybe I also have nature's vasectomy.
They didn't explain that to you? Go ahead. Here's the problem.
No, they don't really spend a lot of time. They're just like, hey, look, you didn't pass the.
Jesus, all
the-
these comics are fucking sterile and not having kids.
Yeah.
Man, what's going on? It's part of the disease of stand-up comedy, I guess, man. That's crazy. Although it's sad because the world needs more comedians. But then again, I guess it's a good thing because, as we mentioned earlier, comics are fucked up in the head anyway.
Yes.
I don't know. I think everyone's kind of fucked up in the head. It's just that
It's true. And you know what?
comics are a little more articulate.
They're
and-
more honest about it. They're willing to talk about it. Like I said earlier, one of the reasons I love, hanging out with comics is because you can say anything and you can go anywhere. And comics, they're not the people, to a certain extent. I
Yeah,
mean, there
I
are
mean,
some people out there that are drama queens.
Things
or
are getting a
whatever.
little more where
Yeah.
people are more concerned
But
about
I
what
think
you say.
I think,
than-
relatively speaking, compared to people in general, like comics
well, yeah,
have a
well,
thick skin.
of course.
you know?
Like I could never work in an office setting. I mean, I'd be the guy by the water cooler dropping dead baby jokes, and I'd go to HR a week later, then I'd be gone. Like I think this is really one of the only places.
and a lot of people aren't gonna talk about OCD or their childhood or whatever in front of a group of strangers or anything like that. So you can say whatever you want. I mean, like you said, everybody's kind of messed up, but comics talk about it and they're honest about it. So I guess maybe that's something.
Yeah.
All right.
Putting that out there.
Yeah, there's times. Even before a show, too, I don't like talking to anyone but the comics.
Yeah.
Do you feel that?
Huh.
Like, even an hour or two before a show, before I have to do, I'm like, I'll talk to comics. I don't want to talk to family or friends. I don't.
Well-
I feel like this is whatever I've got to do to go up on stage. Only a comic right now is the only one I can have a conversation because they'll know when to walk off.
Well,
or they'll know what,
that's exactly why, though, is because a comic will understand what's in your head and that you need to kind of keep your space and your head together and you're going to go up there. Whereas some other person,
But some comics, I mean, there are some comics who can literally just chat with you, drinking a beer by the bar and tell, I'm going on, and then they run
Yeah.
right up there and they
Yeah,
just,
yeah, that
and
always-
I don't know how that's done.
I
'cause
can't do that either.
I almost can't even talk to comedians a few minutes before. I need to just sit by the stage or wherever I'm setting up and.
Open mics are good for that too, though, because sometimes some crazy, uncontrollable shit goes down, and then you have to go up right afterwards.
Yeah.
And so that might train you, because I had an experience last Monday, and I went up, and So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would talk to a comic, but not just because I've had that problem before. Somebody's just talking, and you don't want to be rude. You don't want to be like, look, just go away now because I'm going to go tell jokes or whatever. But at the same time,
I just think it's that same feeling that you get when you're trying to extricate yourself from a conversation and the person they're not picking up on that and they keep stacking forward and you're like, okay, how do I get out of this conversation? And that anxiety, that's that same feeling, where it's just kind of.
Yeah.
And I think some comics can pick up on that, and some guys.
I always had this that joke is a new joke, and it's still not 100%. I don't know if any jokes that I do are, but it's like a joke about. I always thought it'd be too inside comedy, but it's starting to work. It's at least 50% of the time. Whereas like I had people that invite me to dinner before the shows. I'm like, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
I always thought that was just be like comics will understand what I'm talking about, but there are crowds that understand if I explain it thoroughly. Of why I don't want to go talk to people before I have to go talk more.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. I'm like, well, it sounds like a fucking pretentious comic up there going on and on about and being high maintenance. But they sort of got it. I mean, I'm still working on the joke, but it is one of those things where I can't deal with that. I used to have old girlfriends do that, and their family would be in town, and I'd be doing a show. They were coming to the show, like, let's all go to dinner. And then we'll just go right to your show. Fuck that.
So then you got to do another show before you do
We
the
have
show.
a big feast for 2 hours, then I'll just walk on stage, and you guys will sit in the second row, and we'll just do that? No.
Or the best thing is when your girlfriend, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but your girlfriend will start a fight with you like right before you have to go to the club. That's all. That's happened to me a couple times, and it's that's when you really feel like I don't know, like a stage monkey, like a road, because it's like, okay, I feel miserable, and I've just had this miserable experience, and now I'm gonna, and maybe that gets more to being skilled and being able to talk about those things live as they happen. Because now that I think about it, I've always gone up there and just tried to be like joke, and.
But I've been able to do it too when I've been thrown on stage when I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah.
A mouthful of coffee, and someone's like, "You got to go up," and I mean, I've been able to pull it off at times, so it can be done. It's just like if I had my choice, it would just be a little time away and, by myself, and then just can't be talking about lunch on Thursday at 2:00 right before they call my name. Mm-hmm. It drives me people just talking about mundane life details before you go on. Goddamn. And then I got to transition to something. This is supposed to be an event or a show, but I'm just here talking about lunch 2 days from now.
Yeah.
Oh, it makes me fucking batty. I don't know. Probably sound high maintenance.
No,
even
man,
around
it's a
comics.
comedy thing. We get it.
Okay, cool.
All right, we've gone about an hour, and I think maybe we should go ahead and wrap this up. Paul, do you have anything that you want to plug, or we already talked about your upcoming dates?
Yeah, that's just the website's paulhoopercomedy.com, and then I'll have a CD on Stand Up Records coming out in the next couple months.
Now, has that been recorded yet, or are you going to?
It was recorded 2 years ago.
Wow, and you're still sitting on it.
Well, I procrastinated, dragged my ass on it, but it's coming out. So
They're
keep
pressing
in
the
mind.
acetates as we speak.
So it's time to record a new one.
You're just making it perfect, right? You're just a perfectionist.
You have a double set going on.
Yeah, I'm going to do another one. Because I can do another 45 now, of course. Like, it's going to be like 50 minutes, and I like it, but I don't do so much. I mean, like 35 minutes of what's on that CD is gone.
Wow. And are you going to release that online, or because that seems to be kind of the new model for a lot of people? I know Louis C.K. did that, Rogan did that, and it seemed to work out great for both of them. And I would anticipate more people are going to be moving in that direction. Or you're still going to have the physical.
Yeah, the hard copy. I mean, Stand Up Records will do it all. They'll put it on iTunes. They'll put it on their site. They'll have the hard copy so I can sell it at shows and stuff like that.
Do you have a firm date for that release?
I don't have a firm date.
Soon.
Soon.
Definitely soon.
Soon.
And immediately
Dude.
thereafter comes the next one.
Yeah.
Because you've gathered up all this material in the 2 years in between.
Yeah, absolutely. I could do a new one next week. And so that's what I want to try to do is release this one, then shortly thereafter put another one out too. And I love Stand Up Records. Dan that runs it there is great. And like the roster of comics they have, it's
Yeah, I think
pretty amazing.
Daryl Lennox is on Stand Up Records.
Daryl Lennox, yeah, he's done some amazing recordings. Yeah, some great guys on there.
And at Paul Hooper at Twitter.
That's it.
Nice. All right. Well, thanks for joining us tonight. James, any words of wisdom you want to throw out there before we head on out?
Words of wisdom. I got nothing.
No?
Nothing.
Words of wisdom.
In a Zen sort of way, nothing is kind of words of wisdom, really. That way you're not filling people's heads. So
Yeah, just embrace the void.
Embrace the void. Do Tai Chi.
Tai Chi is always
Yeah, there you go.
important.
Do a little Tai Chi. Get a neti pot. Those are my words of wisdom.
You know, Yep. I want to just say before what made the whole week, rounded out the whole week, is last night around 4 a.m. I saw a seagull eat a drunk's vomit off the streets of Seattle.
That's
And
Seattle right there. That's Seattle living. That
It was
sums it
a
up.
wonderful moment for me.
The only thing missing from that is like a Starbucks cup somewhere, like rattling in the background.
Yeah. It was great.